You know, you would think that you would see Leatherface a whole lot in this movie since the title says Leatherface, but it's not really the case. Hey guys, welcome back. I just watched Leatherface on DirecTV now. It's exclusively on there, and I know they're releasing it in some theaters, but if you have a friend that has a DirecTV Now access thing, then you may want to watch it there. But before I get into this, Finn Jones is actually in this movie, and it was kind of hilarious because at one point, I felt like he was gonna say, I am the Iron Fist. But luckily he doesn't say that because that would have just been insane. And I can honestly say that he plays a better sheriff than Iron Fist. Now talking about this movie is a little bit weird because, you know, I went into this movie thinking it was gonna be an origin. But honestly, the first and last 10 minutes of this film is basically that. That is the origin movie that maybe a lot of us viewers or a lot of the people that like Texas Chainsaw Massacre were going into this movie thinking it was. But everything in between the film is nothing like an origin, I would say. It's very different, and it just doesn't feel like it's a Leatherface movie or a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. It's more mainly about the teenagers that escape like the mental hospital. Now, what I would say about the direction of this movie, it was pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. It did really feel like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque kind of type feeling because the way it's shot, it felt like the 2003 version, and it had a lot of aspects as to, you know, like that you would say is recognizable of kind of like the universe that they built around this character. But for me, it kind of loses me with some of the storytelling. Now, the acting itself, I would say, is decent. It's not all that great, but once we get into like the story and the plot and, you know, how they're developing these characters and trying to like tell us, you know, how Leatherface came up to be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I feel like most of the time in the movie itself, they were hiding Leatherface, like they were trying to get the audience guessing, which is pretty cool in one way, but at the same time, you know, you have like a very weird set of teenagers where like they show us a couple and then the whole time you're like, oh, that's him, and then when they finally reveal him, it's like, oh, okay, you know, why him? It kind of makes no sense. Now, some of the scenes in the movie itself are pretty cool. The ones especially where people are getting killed and slaughtered left and right. One of my favorite scenes in the movie itself is where they're at the mental hospital and they're escaping. It kind of felt like they were escaping the Arkham Asylum because they just look like a bunch of bad guys leaving and just tossing people out the window. And then other scenes as well in the movie itself was like the diner scene where they just kind of go crazy, just cause havoc, start shooting people, and the police department come after them to start hunting them. And obviously the police department are corrupt as hell, or at least one of them. But basically the movie to me kind of felt predictable in that way because they would move from location to location, kill some people here and there. They'll do some sadistic shit like just fuck on top of a corpse and stuff like that. So it was kind of predictable in some aspects. Now, the one thing that I did like about the movie is that it didn't use a whole lot of jump scares, which I'm totally okay with because I hate jump scares, but it relied on its gore and like bloodiness, which was pretty good, and I really liked that. But once we get to like the final act of the film, that's where it totally loses me because once we find out who Leatherface is, in the entire time, you know, we basically turn on a switch where it's like, oh, okay, he is full on Leatherface now. Like he completely changes. Like the whole time we have learned to see him as one complete different person, and then when this event happens or whenever his face gets disconfigured or whatever, he's not that person anymore. Like it totally lost me. And they threw in so many things at the end that was like, hey, just in case you didn't think this was Leatherface, here's a chainsaw, go ahead and kill him with that. So I was just like, all right. But I did like the film because it didn't pull any punches as far as killing people. It kind of just goes on and kills people without hesitating, and I actually like that. The biggest takeaway of this movie was that Lily Taylor was pretty terrifying to me as the mother of Leatherface. She was pretty good in this movie and I really liked her, and that's probably the biggest takeaway. The teenagers themselves, I say, you know, they were pretty decent for the most part, and mainly for me, the gore is what worked the most of the time. But yeah, guys, that's overall my thoughts. Really, you know, I didn't get any big takeaways from this movie because I felt like it was, you know, okay. I kind of did like a lot of the aspects itself, like the goriness and whatnot. I liked some of the things that they did with the characters. It was pretty interesting. But at the same time, it loses me when it's trying to tell this origin story that they kind of just came up with and kind of like doesn't make sense as to, you know, what was shown in previous films. So I feel like if you're a noob or you never heard of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I really doubt, or you know nothing about the storyline or his origin, then you might enjoy this movie. Like I said, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on that doesn't really resemble Leatherface or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it felt just kind of like a bunch of teenagers with mental problems going around killing people. So I felt like they should have gone with their own title instead of trying to tie it up to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre universe. So with that said, guys, I'm gonna give this one a 3 out of 5. I still find it enjoyable, so if you guys are into Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you might want to check this one out. It's definitely not as bad as Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D. That one was just horrible. But with that said, guys, what is your favorite Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, and which one is your worst? Make sure to leave it down in the comments. And Cult of Chucky is coming out next week, so I'm pretty excited about that one, and I believe it's going to be on Netflix, so as soon as I watch it, I'll make sure to put up my review for it. So if you guys are new to my channel, guys, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the little bell at the bottom. Also, if you guys like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and share it with some of your friends. But as always, guys, stay tuned.